Pranakasha live stream.
Hi folks, this is Matt from Pranakasha Productions. Today we have Birke Duncan once again, and then also we have Jason Marc Harris, author of Master of Rods and Strings, and also co-author of the book that we're going to be talking about today, right here, which is Laugh Without Guilt. Now, I never really felt guilty whenever I laugh. So, how'd you guys come up with that title?
Jason did.
Oh. Okay.
Now, if I remember right, we were thinking of something that would help to reinforce that, these aren't dirty jokes per se, right? They're not especially offensive jokes. So the idea that laughter could be, a pleasant activity without guilt, because, sometimes there is some degree of things people feel uncomfortable about with the humor they share or participate in, or might even be unintentionally nervously laughing and not really thinking it's funny. So here, the idea was freely laugh, guffaw, laugh without guilt. I think that was
okay.
The rationale when we talked about it.
So this is the antithesis of the type of books you usually write then, because you're like into horror and all kinds of dirty type of stuff, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So we'll leave it at that.
So what drew you, besides were you already friends with Birke when you guys teamed up to do this book?
Yeah, we had done a previous project, the Troll Tale book, where we collected additional folklore. Birke already had a couple pieces ready to go. I think both the Troll Tale itself and the Poltergeist experience. But weren't both by Garrett Vance?
Those were. And I also had The River Boys by Bob McAllister, God rest his soul.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah. We were sort of introduced through, I think it was actually Tom Dubois, who was teaching in Scandinavian studies, which involved folklore as well at University of Washington. And so we sort of teamed up and included interviews of people around the greater Seattle area and beyond on the West Coast, but especially Pacific Northwest, to gather things like family legends, local ghost stories, family tales, various things like that, under the auspices of the journal Northwest Folklore. So it was sort of a project and one that was both somewhat scholarly and fun.
So a French guy interested in Scandinavian studies. That's interesting.
He was actually and is actually a French Canadian and Irish origin, and he spent much of his childhood in Canada.
Okay. So that's a little bit closer to the snow.
Now I once asked him, Dr. Dubois, what got you into folklore? And he said it was because of his grandmother, who was psychic.
Did you say psychic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, his grandmother could look at a package from one of her kids and say, oh, this is, and then name what it was before she opened it. She knew who was calling before she answered the phone, and this was long before caller ID. And the day before she died, she told her daughter, well, I'm going to die tomorrow, so let's make the arrangements. She didn't even seem sick. She made all the funeral arrangements for herself, and the next day, she had gone to heaven. That's a rare case of a timely death. Yes, that was a timely death. Now, Jason, I once asked you how you got into collecting urban legends and the like.
You may remember what I said better than I do.
Well, you said there were a couple of things. There was a legend about someone who had died in the dorm, and one of your mates believed the story.
Right. So, the first year at the University of California, Santa Barbara, freshmen in the dorms, and there was an upperclassman there who started as a blabbing to me a bit about this and that and the other thing, and pointing out, for instance, that room up there in the hallway above us, there was someone who died there, and also that person's roommate got a 4.0 for the semester because that's what happens when your roommate dies. And it seemed possible to me at the time. But yeah, I think somebody else I was talking to was sure it was true. And eventually I went and even asked some assistant director of housing if it were true. And this is where it got really weird. She said it was true, but that I would be prosecuted if anything happened. And then after further investigation, discovered, no, it's not true. It's not true at all. But a very compelling urban legend that's spread around nationally and even beyond. I did use that premise to write a story though about this is my first semester, about someone who does murder their roommate to get that 4.0, injecting the old oxygen bubble trick, a pre-med student. Yeah. So
interestingly,
it was a movie subject too. I forget the names of there are at least one or two movies based using that premise about if your roommate dies, you get a 4.0. Oh. The rationale is that because you're so traumatized, by the loss of somebody in your close space, maybe a good friend even. But yeah, just a compelling legend.
So in other words, you get an automatic 4.0. They just grant you one to help you overcome your grief.
I suppose so. I guess the rationale that seemed to go with it was that you would be not able to focus the rest of that semester. So it doesn't mean you get it for your entire college career, but just that semester. Yeah, basically a consolation prize for grief. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I highly doubt that's true.
No evidence that's true. Yeah, we're not.
Because I mean that would call into question the integrity of the whole grade system at that particular university.
Right.
If they're giving out free 4.0s.
Yeah, but you can see why it'd be an attractive legend and one that a lot of people talked about. And yeah, there were others about how there was a hidden red room, for instance, satanic rituals allegedly done, that kind of thing. And the red room is something that is believed to be at various universities as well.
Meanwhile, your name is written in blood red.
Yes.
Over your head.
Right.
Well, I actually
been arrested. I'm good. Fine.
When I was in tech school in Mississippi, in the Air Force Tech School, which is where I went after basic training, in the dorm that I was in, there was an urban legend about a particular airman who killed himself in the room next door. So there you go.
Was there any evidence anyone such person ever existed or not?
Again, it was the same thing. Everybody was talking about, in that room over there, this one guy killed him. He hanged himself. And then everybody was saying it, but nobody actually went so far as to go find out whether it was true or not.
No,
back then, this was like the late 90s, so the internet was just starting to get rolling for the general population. So it's not like I could go Google it or something back then.
Yeah, it was hard sometimes to check on these things so quickly. Birke, you were about to say something, I think.
Oh, well, if you heard it from the friend of a friend, it's usually a legend.
Yeah.
Or someone says they read it in the paper, but they don't say which newspaper or what page it was on. They haven't flipped it for you.
Right.
It was just in the paper.
Kind of like I saw it on the internet.
These days, yes. Now, the way I got into urban legend research was I was reading a newspaper story that I thought was funny, and I read it out loud to my mother. It seems that in Israel, there was a woman who saw a cockroach in her toilet, and she oversprayed it with insecticide. And then her husband came in, smoking a cigarette, and he walked into the bathroom and absentmindedly threw it into the open toilet, and boom, it flared up and burned him. And as the paramedics were carrying him away on a stretcher, they asked how he had burned himself. When he told them, they laughed so hard they dropped him and he broke his arm. Yes, I thought his pain was hilarious, and my mother said to me, "Oh, that one again." She said, "That one has been on the wire services for years. It's always in some third world country or the deep south." And I've heard it since then, too, in other places.
Now, is there different versions where the person breaks their leg instead of their arm?
Yes. In fact, the punchline of it may have been taken from the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Mm.
Yeah. It was an episode called My Mother Can Beat Up My Father, wherein Dick Van Dyke winds up in the hospital from accidentally flipping himself. And then the nurse asks, "How did you get the scratches on your arm?" He says, "Well, when I told the ambulance men what happened, they laughed so hard they dropped me in the rose bushes." Now, I don't think that would really happen. These guys are pros.
Well, that's a lot tamer than the one Big Bang Theory episode I saw where Wallowitz ends up in the emergency room. I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I happen to have missed it.
Okay. We'll just let it go.
Yeah.
Brooke mentioned his mother there, which reminds me, I did hear an urban legend from my mother at one point that she had heard, and she remembered it because it disturbed her a lot because it was told somewhat believably, as they often are. And that was the idea that there was a babysitter hired by some young mother who, because she got, crazy high on some drugs like LSD, confused putting the turkey in the oven and the baby in the crib.
Uh-oh.
Yes, right. And so there was somebody who told my mother this, and she's very disturbed by it. She's at the age, was considering maybe getting a babysitter one of these days. Yeah. And, eventually she learned that it was an urban legend. But
I heard a version of that one.
I think so. Pardon? You have heard that?
I've heard the one about the pet owner who puts who bathes their dog and puts them in the microwave to dry them off.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard that, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have a similar one to those in this joke book. And it was told at Olympic College by this young co-ed named Cherie Rutan. And I was there as the guest speaker to collect jokes. And she said she'd heard from her grandmother. And you can tell from her name, Cherie, that she's of French origin.
I was going to say.
Yes, well, she said that they had a South American maid, and they had relatives over from France. Then this French relative lady walked into the kitchen and pointed at the oven and said to the maid, "Gâteau." And the South American maid said, "No, no, no, gâteau, no, no, no." It continued this way for a while until finally this sad South American maid put the cat in the oven. Now, as you know from being a French speaker, gâteau in French means
cake.
Cake, yes.
Yeah.
And in Spanish, gato means
cat.
Yes. Now, I consulted none other than Jan Harald Brunvand about this.
Wait, what's this person's name?
Well, it looks like Jan Harold Brunvand, but it's Jan Harald Brunvand. That's a Norwegian name meaning John Harold Brown Water.
Brown Water, uh-oh.
Yes, well, he's the preeminent expert on urban legends, and he said that he had read that same story in 1968 as related by William F. Buckley in French, sorry. So this leads me to believe that Cherie Rutan's grandmother must have known William F. Buckley. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known this story.
Mm.
Yes.
Unless someone in this story is psychic.
Oh, yes. Like maybe Tom Dubois' grandmother was involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You may have heard of the urban legend, The Vanishing Hitchhiker, which I believe was the first book Brunvand published using that title to sort of introduce the public more to the study of urban legends. Oh, by the way, back to that dorm, there was another one that often gets circulated that happened to be there as well. Again, very deadpan delivery from this individual who, to this day, I don't know whether he actually believed all these things happened in our dorm or he was just trying to haze the freshmen a little bit. But he really had the delivery of someone who seemed to think he was living in a truly disturbing environment. And that was that there was a murder of a roommate that was different than the one who received the 4.0, where she comes home and everything's very dark and she kind of gets creeped out. She kind of leaves. She comes back later on, and written in blood is, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" And then the dead body of her roommate is there, and everything's bloody and so forth. Now, speaking of horror, there's a horror film called Urban Legend back in the 90s that had Freddy Krueger play, in fact, the folklore professor. Not Freddy Krueger, so Robert Englund, right? The actor played the folklore professor there. And it used a lot of these urban legends that we brought up, including the microwave one. It's a fun little thriller. If you have you come across it or not?
No, I've heard of it. I saw commercials, and I knew one of the cast members.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah, it's worth seeing. So there's I think 2 of them.
Yeah,
maybe the first one's worth seeing at least.
The guy, I think it's Josh Jackson, the guy who was in Dawson's Creek. I was in a play with him 30 years ago.
Oh, neat.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this film, Matt, also, or?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I think you'd enjoy it just for the cameo by Robert Englund, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other relatively well-known actors that I forget their names of right now, but yeah, you'll recognize a few other people in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's campy, but it's fun for Halloween. So.
We did have one urban legend sneak into the Troll Tale and Other Scary Stories, and that was one told by Bob McAllister.
Oh.
Yes, he told us it was a ghost story within the greater ghost story, The River Boys. He said how it was Halloween night and these kids were telling ghost stories to scare each other. And you may know this one, The Hook. Yes. You know that one, Matt?
I'd love to hear it again.
Yes. Well, there are these teenagers who are parked at Lover's Lane. And yes, they're getting hot and heavy. They've got the radio playing 12th of Never by Johnny Mathis. They're kissing and hugging. And then...
This better not be about you and my sister.
No, definitely not. We've covered that area. Anyway, the DJ interrupts to say, "We interrupt our mood music to warn you that a dangerous homicidal maniac has escaped from the local institution. He's known as the Hook because of the razor-sharp hook he has in place of his right hand, and he likes to prey upon young lovers in Lover's Lane." We now return to Johnny Mathis. Well, the boyfriend wants to go back to making out, and the girlfriend says, "Oh, I don't want to take my chances with the Hook." Well, this frustrates the boyfriend, who tries to convince her that they're not in any danger. The girlfriend freezes him out, so the boyfriend angrily starts up the car and stomps on the gas, and they roar out of Lover's Lane. Then they drive to the girlfriend's house in silence. He stops the car in front of her place, and even though he's mad, he's a gentleman. He gets out of the car and he walks around to her side to open the door for her. And there he sees the silver hook hanging from the door handle.
Is there like a bloody stub of an arm attached to it?
There could be, in some versions, there's that problem, yes. Not in the one McAllister told. That's often told as a true story. In fact, it was once the subject of a Far Side cartoon where the Hook is telling the story to his grandchildren about the story of the 2 terrible teenagers.
It still is.
Yes.
Well, speaking of the Far Side, I used to deliver pizzas for Domino's. Believe it or not, Gary Larson was in our delivery zone, and several of the guys that I worked with had delivered pizzas to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's not an urban legend. That's 100% true.
Well, I sold him a shirt once.
Oh, really? Well, I actually did deliver a pizza to Bill Gates, who also was in our delivery zone, and he appeared at the door in his PJs and gave me a $2.35 tip.
Wow, no wonder he's rich.
So there.
My.
So, did we want to talk about the Laugh Book a little, or we're going to just do urban legends the whole time?
Well, that's part of it.
Or is this Laugh Book a thinly veiled
Well, we can make a transition,
attempt?
Right?
It's actually so every joke in here is really an urban legend that's just been sugar-coated into a guilt-free joke.
No. That's just one chapter.
So actually, once again, it's like some devious conspiracy where the real point of this book is that one chapter and all the rest is fluff.
Oh, no. Different subgenres of interest.
Yes.
Subgenres. Oh, okay then.
Well, as it happens, I know another spooky story that would go along with that theme of the hook, but it's in the joke book.
Okay. Well, it's almost Christmas season, so I mean, 'tis the season for spooky stories.
That's true. That used to be.
I mean, what can be more scary than Santa Claus?
Well, you know what? Ghost stories were part of the Christmas tradition quite a while ago.
Ooh.
I mean, the last century, that was part of the tradition, telling ghost stories. But here's an example, and this is from the joke book. It's called The Bronze Rat. I learned it from a folklore student. There was this man who worked for an insurance company, and he had been at an attorney's office, a law firm, I should say, all day long, giving deposition. And in deposition, they ask you the minutest questions. It becomes laborious, tedious, and awful. Drags on. It was 8 hours. It felt like 80 hours. Okay. The man left the law firm exhausted. It was dark outside, walking through the streets of Manhattan, and he comes upon an antique store in Greenwich Village. So he decides to look around. And he goes through all the curios, and at the very back of the shop, he finds the owner. The owner is an old man with glasses like yours. And
are you implying these are old man glasses?
Words to that effect, yes. Anyway, right next to this old man is a statue of a bronze rat. And the customer says, "How much for the rat?" And the antique dealer says, "That is $100. But if you want the story behind it, you must pay me $500. And the customer says, "Oh, I'm not going to pay $400 for an anecdote. Just wrap up the bronze rat and give it to me." So he gives him the bronze rat in a package, nice brown parcel, and the man leaves. The man is walking down the streets of Greenwich Village at night alone, or so he thinks, because he feels something is watching him. He looks back and he sees a rat following him.
How big is this rat?
Well, it's New York, so it's probably 2 feet long. And he's disgusted by this sight, and he starts walking faster. He looks back, and there are 2 rats following him. So he picks up his pace a little more, double time, looks back. There are 10 rats following him.
Are you sure these aren't possums?
No, because they're the wrong color. They're brown.
Okay.
Yes, and they have thin tails. Yes, if he were chased by possums, that would be a different problem for him. So anyway, he's running now. He looks back, and the street is black with rats. And they're staring at his package, and they all have glowing red eyes. And the man runs to Battery Park. And he takes the package and he throws it out into the water as far as he can. Then he shimmies up a light pole and he watches as all the rats in Manhattan, all of that package, they all go into the water like lemmings and they drown. Every rat in Manhattan. So the man runs back to the antique store and he charges to the back of the shop and he finds the old shopkeeper waiting for him. The shopkeeper looks at him with glowing red eyes and says, "I've been expecting you. Did you come back for the story?" And the customer says, "No, I was wondering if you had a statue of a lawyer."
Well, it sounds like somebody did some serious rat voodoo on that statue.
Yes, and I should say that there's a term for that. It's known as an anti-tale.
Anti-tale?
Yes, that is where you tell a spooky story, but there's a twist at the end that turns it into a joke.
Okay, let's see. There must be some. So it's sort of a bait and switch type of story.
It is, yes.
Like the banging shutter story too, where sometimes things are explained as not supernatural too.
Yeah.
We also had some jokes in there that weren't necessarily meant to be so funny, but were just sort of achieved their effect by their sheer not funniness.
Yeah, like the whole chapter on puns. That we were sitting together in the By George Cafe with a sign up saying, "Tell us your jokes." And
Okay.
I said to Jason that I was sick of puns. They must be the world's easiest joke to tell and come up with. And then sitting right next to me, Jason came up with a rather involved joke. You remember that one, Jason? About
which chapter? Do you remember which chapter that was? Puns? Which number?
puns.
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
103.
I do remember working backwards from it.
Yes, like a mystery author.
Here's the test. I'll pick a random one and we'll see if you guys can like.
Oh, I wanted Jason to tell his joke.
Okay, go for it.
The wizard in the forest.
I don't have it in front of me though right now, so.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, yes. I'm going to steal your
I forget the questions that the wizard asked at this point.
Let's see. There are these two friends, Bernie and Sam, who hear the legend of a wizard in the forest. And if you answer the wizard's questions, he will give you lots of riches.
Well, wait a minute. We saw this on Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
No, not exactly. That's with the bridge. Anyway.
It's full inspiration, though, sure.
But this is more like the riddle of the Sphinx. So anyway, Bernie goes out to meet the wizard, and he finds this old wizard sitting on a stump. And the wizard says to him, how deep must you dig before you reach the center of the earth?" And Bernie thinks about it and thinks about it, can't come up with an answer. The wizard jumps off the tree stump, rips it from the ground, and bops Bernie on the head with it. And Bernie goes back to his friend Sam. And Sam says, "Did you answer the questions?" And Bernie says, "No, I was stumped."
All right. Now, this is a test. Now, should I ask both of you or should I put one of you on the spot?
Let's do it together, and then we'll
okay.
See if you can rise to the occasion.
Maybe we can turn it into a game show that whoever wins the question gets a point.
Okay.
All right.
So is Matt's Chats.
Right. Now, I just happened to open to page 108. And I don't know if you know this, but 108 happens to be a rather magical number in a lot of traditions. We won't go into it. Let's leave it at that. But And in the bottom third of page 108, it says, what does NATO stand for?
This is from Brian Thompson. It stands for no action, talk only.
Ah, okay, you get a point. All right, let's try another one. The very next one. What do the initials ACLU stand for?
All criminals love us.
Ah, but you didn't ding the bell. You have to ding first.
Oh, ding.
Burke's gonna get these.
Okay.
Yes.
Birke Duncan. Your answer, please.
All criminals love us.
That is correct. All right, one more. And for the championship of round one, what does capital M period, capital A period stand for? In other words, MA.
Meaningless aspiration.
You forgot to hit the dinger.
Oh, ding.
Okay,
Meaningless
unfortunately,
aspiration.
we're going to have to give that point to Jason for failure to hit the dinger.
If I just didn't say anything, it'll come up better. I haven't refreshed recently as I should have, so I apologize.
Okay, so now for round two, this is worth twice as many points. We're going to ask the same three questions. However, you need to give a different, however, similarly funny answer. All right. What does NATO stand for? Ding, I'll take it.
No alpacas.
Matt. National Archive for Transistor Oratorios.
They're like balderdash.
Yeah.
Okay, now, does anybody have an even better answer than that?
Nope.
For NATO, no alpacas take. Then what do you do with the O? I was going to say.
Over.
Take over, yeah.
No
It's
alpacas take over. Okay.
International law. Yeah.
All right, I'll buy that. All right. Number two. What do the initials ACLU stand for?
Antichrist Liberation Unit.
Oh,
that's a good one.
That's a really good one. That's actually better than All Criminals Love Us. Antichrist Liberation Union.
That's a good one.
Hey, and that also fits the horror genre.
Right? I'm not even going to challenge that one. It's so good.
Okay, we're going to let that. That's for 2 points. All right, now number three. This should be easy because there's only 2 letters. What does MA stand for?
Mice analgesis.
What's analgesis?
Isn't it somebody with a pain killing process? Like an analgesic?
Okay, yeah. Well, if you're a lab rat, you might need an analgesic,
Right.
depending on what they're doing to you. Okay. Birke, do you have an even greater answer?
No, but Jason told me something his father, Professor Stephen Harris, had told him about academic initials. That BS stands for what you think it does. MS stands for more of the same.
That's true. Yes.
PhD stands for pilot high and deep.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay.
We have jokes about professors in here too. And
Okay, here's another joke. The next following joke, I'm going to tell the first line, and let's see if you can tell me the punchline. This is on page 109. Have you heard the joke about the witch's broom?
Your friend told us this one, Jason. Ballin, is that his name?
It says here, Patrick Wade Runyon.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, why did I get Ballin anyway?
I remember
The
interviewing
joke is
him.
funny. It's sweeping the valley.
Have you heard the joke about the witch's broom?
No, it's funny. It's sweeping the valley.
Ooh, you got that. Okay, this guy knows his content. All right, let's play this game a little longer here. Okay, here's a joke from Tom Birkendahl of Portland, Oregon.
No, there's no N in Birkendahl.
Oh, Tom Birkendahl.
It means Birch Valley.
Birke Valley.
Birch Valley.
Well, I'm also trying to tie it into the fact that your name is Burke.
That is the reason. Yes.
There should be a Birke Valley.
A Birke Valley.
There might be a Birke.
Oregon, 1970s. Sid Tannenbaum, Canadian citizen in Norway, July 1996. Have you heard of the Hikari nomads? Did I spell Hikari?
Hikari.
Hikari. Have you heard of the Hikari nomads?
Yes, I have. Every day the chief walks out of his tent, looks around, and says, "Where the heck are we?"
Oh, heck are we? I spelled it wrong. Okay, I mean, I pronounced it wrong. I ruined the joke.
Right.
Okay. Darn it. Okay, we'll just edit that out. All right, next. This is the accent pun mentioned in the introduction. Nick Soman Faulkner, Bob's class, April 23rd, 1998, issued a disclaimer. This joke is about language differences. So now we're going to get eaten alive by the internet after we tell this joke. But what the heck? A Frenchman, a German, and a Japanese man volunteer for a social experiment. They have to live together for 3 months on an island and be completely self-sufficient. They meet with an anthropologist to plan it out. The social scientists say to the Frenchman, "You're going to bring 3 months worth of food to this island." They say to the German, "You are responsible for defense." They say to the Japanese man, "We've got everything else covered, but you are in charge of supplies." The Frenchman brings gondolas full of cheese, crepes, and other forms of French cuisine. He meets the German on the island. The German has crates full of rifles, machine guns, pistols, bullets, knives, crossbows, arrows, and tear gas. They'll fight off any pirates or terrorists, no trouble at all. The two men wonder what became of their Japanese colleague. They wander around the island looking for him since he's in charge of supplies. The Japanese man leaps out from behind a treat, and shouts,
"Supplies! Surprise!"
Right, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Well, that was a big build-up for not that great of a punchline.
Well, do you know the one about Jose watching the baseball game?
Jose?
Yes. Yes,
Well, I do know several Jose jokes, like the Jose and Jose B, and so on.
Well, this is slightly different. It's another accent pun.
Okay.
One of the few in this book. Now, Jose really wants to see the baseball game, but there are no seats left.
Oh, I know this one.
Yes, I heard it from Ed Selfers, God rest his soul.
Ed Selfers.
Yeah.
He was the woodshop teacher, right?
Right. Anyway,
Okay.
Jose climbs up to the top of the flagpole.
Yeah, I totally know this one.
In the house, so he can watch the game. And after the game, he comes back down, and his friend says to him, "Jose, did you like the game?" And Jose says, "Oh, Americans are so nice. Before the game, they all stood up and asked, 'Jose, can you see?'"
Yeah. I know many versions of this joke. I mean, some kid told me this joke when I was in kindergarten, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Selfers gets a lot of the blame for this book because he heard me telling bad jokes one day before our woodshop class in 1979. And he said to me, "Go up there to that blackboard, and you're going to start every class session by telling a joke." Now, one time I told a dirty joke, and that didn't go over well with him. He looked at me like this. It was the only time the other guys in the class laughed at one of the jokes.
Do you happen to remember what that joke was?
Yes. And
Might
it's
you?
not okay. This teacher is standing at the head of the class. She's the substitute teacher. And this boy comes in and he's late. She says, "Where have you been?" He says, "Oh, I was on top of Cherry Hill."
I know this one.
And then another boy comes in and the substitute teacher says, "Where have you been?" "I was on top of Cherry Hill." Then a girl comes in and the teacher says, "Don't tell me you were on top of Cherry Hill." The girl says, "No, I am Cherry Hill."
Yep, I remember that joke. I
Yeah.
also heard that one in second grade, except
And-
the version I heard was Mulberry Hill.
Well, Mr. Selfers didn't like that one, and he said I could not tell dirty jokes in class.
So back in the day, I think you were still allowed to get a SWAT for that. Okay. I almost got a SWAT from, get this, the PD teacher. And the funny thing was, we were just discussing where I was going to get a SWAT or not. He had this big paddle, right? And just the discussion of it got me so riled up, I almost started crying right in front of him. Because it just made me feel so bad that I was going to get swatted, because I always thought of myself as a good kid. But now when I go back and think about it, I'm like, well, maybe that goes there's like deep psychological stuff, because like back when I was a kid, kids still got spankings. So maybe I equated the SWAT with me being bad, and that made me want to start crying, even though I was like in 6th grade or something. Anyway, bit of a diversion there.
Yes.
So are there any, now we're going to divert a tiny bit, within the horror genre, is there some analogy to being swat by your parents or getting a spanking that somehow gets turned into a horror type of a thing?
No, I think Jason could answer that.
I was looking down in his direction.
Good.
So are you asking if there's like a particular book like that or a film?
Well, I'm assuming like within the horror genre, like you were kind of telling me when we were chatting on Facebook, but like, or also in your article that you wrote about horror, it's like, what's so great about horror is that it's more than just cheap thrills and scares. Like there's an underlying psychology to it that if you get down to there, then it's more of an art form. So I was thinking there must be something in the horror genre that somehow goes back to kids getting punished by their parents.
I see what you're saying. Sure. Right. Where the one parent might be sort of transformed into a monster in some way. In some ways, that's almost like a gothic, darker fairy tale too. Like, Hansel and Gretel with the witch in the forest being kind of a double of the mother or stepmother who suggests they get left in the forest to begin with.
Okay.
Thing. So yeah, I think that there's that aspect. In the same way that some of the monsters are, the terrible things that people maybe feel haunted by throughout their lives in some way, shape, or form. That aspect for sure.
Like I was on the plane. I was flying back from Hawaii this weekend, and I was watching a live action version of Beauty and the Beast. And then like that one, the idea is that Beauty and the Beast is sort of like an analogy for being married to a somewhat abusive husband. And then the wife is able to transform this horrible monster back into, the husband that she really wants. That's what I've heard.
Did you see the film, The Babadook, by chance?
I saw the short movie version.
And that is that aspect of sort of the family being haunted by a remnant of the father without giving it away completely, which gives a lot of it away. But yeah, so there's this aspect of sort of dealing with death, dealing with grief sometimes, loss and ambivalence about that, certainly.
Well, also that discipline seems like something a monster does.
Interesting. Yeah. I think we're like in a downer. We need a joke.
Just a bit, yes.
We need a joke.
I've got a
Lift our
terrible
spirits.
Tarzan joke I remember from the book that I
Yes.
remember this one.
Yes, I do already.
Yes. It's another great example of an unfunny joke, which you may still laugh at just by the sheer unfunniness of it. So, what did Tarzan say when he saw 100 elephants running through the jungle?
I don't know.
Well, there go 100 elephants running through the jungle. What did Tarzan say when he saw 100 elephants running through the jungle wearing sunglasses?
What?
He didn't say anything because he didn't recognize them.
Okay. So the book is full of jokes that are the result of folklore research, right?
Yes.
At any point in the book, were you tempted to create your own joke and then pass it off as an actual?
Yes, that happened a lot. Some of these. Well, for instance, I once asked a professor, "How do you make holy water?" He said, "Boil the hell out of it."
Now that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I never heard that one before.
It's an original. All right.
That's very good.
I'll tell you another one, which is an original. It was published last year by a magazine called 101 Words. The author was right here. Now, it was the year of our Lord 1974, and Richard Nixon resigned the office of the President of the United States.
I remember that year.
Yes, and my father said to my older brother Ted and me, "The president is very sad right now. We have to be nice to him." I thought Richard Nixon was going to come slouching through my neighborhood in Bellevue, walking downhill, appropriately enough, and I would go up and express my condolences. Well, I'd look out the window sometimes, but I never saw him. I'd be playing in the front yard, look, no Nixon. Well then, a couple months later, I was in my room counting up my candy when I heard my mother shout to my father, Gene, Richard Nixon is at the door." I ran down the hall as fast as I could. I got to the front door, and it was not Richard Nixon. It was a tall kid in a blue suit, and he was wearing a Nixon mask.
I've seen those masks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the joke?
That's an anecdote. It's in the historical jokes chapter.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, guys. My computer is telling me I have 6 minutes left on the battery.
Oh, recharge.
So we have two options. One, we wrap it up in 6 minutes, or two, you guys keep it going while I go to the other room and get the charger.
We can keep it going for a while.
All right. Be right back.
All right. Yes, indeed. I was considering telling the snail joke. Remember the snail joke?
More than one.
Let's see. I remember the one with the door opening and the snail.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, and there's one thing I'm not quite precise about, but it doesn't matter probably too much. So a knock came to the door, and a man comes into the door, looks around, and suddenly looks down, and there's a snail, and so he just sort of picks the snail up and tosses him back on the grass some distance away. A few years go by, actually, and there's another unexplained knock on the door. He opens the door, and there's a snail, and it says, "What did you do that for?" I don't remember if it was years or months or what it was, but yes.
Years makes it a lot funnier.
Years just makes it funnier, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I do remember that.
What's the snail joke do you remember? For a thing?
It was in the pun chapter, where a snail is driving a car with an S on the front door, the driver's side door.
Mm-hmm.
One of his snail friends says, "Why did you put an S on your Cadillac?" And the snail says, "Because I want people to say, 'Look at that S car go.'"
Oh yes, the escargot. I do remember that one.
Oh man, we got a French theme going today.
Yes.
So it seems. And I got to at least grab that for one transition. That in fact, The book you see behind me does in fact take place in France,
Ah,
in the invented town of Saint Simeon, but based on the actual saint of puppets.
oh.
Yes.
You know who should play Saint Simeon the Fool in a movie? For real. Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
You're good at that.
Yes, because
Yeah.
Saint Simeon the Fool was a pretty obnoxious guy.
Are you implying that Jim Carrey is obnoxious?
I'm, yes, implying that.
I don't even know if does he even do any acting anymore? You hardly see him anymore.
He did that show Kidding. I don't know if you caught that. It was a miniseries on Showtime. I think it was Showtime or HBO, but it got canceled, I think, after 2 or 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually involved puppets. It was a family that involved puppets, too.
Well, I have a YouTube channel with puppets in it who perform happily, and nothing lurid happens.
And there's no blood dripping from them?
No, nothing lurid.
Yeah.
The puppets did not enjoy Jason's book. They felt stereotyped.
Stereotype. But there's more to them than.
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea for a book.
Yes.
Unless maybe you did this in the book. I just read the introduction. I haven't read the book yet. But what if you have a puppet master with strings, right? Who's controlling the puppets, right? What happens if somehow the puppets somehow magically through the strings start controlling him instead?
Have you read this yet?
No. Is that what it's about?
Well, there's more to the relationship than merely puppeteer and puppet. It's not a one-dimensional, one-way street.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, maybe somehow I divined it like your grandma through the introduction. Actually, since just by me holding the book, that idea somehow infected me.
Now, that was Tom Dubois' grandfather.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Dubois.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's more of a symbiotic relationship at work rather than merely a objectified, manipulative one. Yes.
Have you considered mailing a copy of this book to Jeff Dunham?
I do not have that address, first of all.
Of course, I don't know if marionette puppets are in the same category as Jeff Dunham type of puppets. You know, ventriloquist puppets. Yeah, we'll see. Who knows?
Yeah.
He could branch off into a whole new subgenre himself.
Mm-hmm.
Horror jokes.
Yeah, there was a rather frightening EC horror comic book that dealt with a man who had what seemed like a very talented ventriloquist skill, and he had a puppet. But by the end of the comic, you learn it's actually the deformed head that grows out of his hand, his sort of unearthly twin that's been, Birke's laughing there, that actually has been forcing him to do terrible things. And he chops it off at the end, and then it eats him up, and they're both dead. But yeah, this dummy there had a very interesting take on it.
Of course, they stole it from Total Recall,
books
as you know.
back in the 50s.
Oh, darn, Total Recall stole it from them then.
Well,
yeah, this is Tales from the Crypt.
Well, I would recommend an Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode called Glass Eye, narrated by William Shatner.
Ooh.
Yes. He's telling a lady the story of his sister who had fallen in love with a music hall ventriloquist. William Shatner's sister is played by Jessica Tandy. Then she falls in love with Tom Conway, who is the music hall performer. And it's got quite a shocker of an ending.
Is it black and white?
Yes.
That sounds, I'd be interested in that just because of anything William Shatner has a Star Trek connection.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What was that called again?
The Glass Eye.
The Glass Eye.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, one more joke test. I'm just going to pick a random page. Page 28. Now, 28 is an interesting number because, of course, that's 4 weeks. 28.
Mm-hmm.
True enough.
Okay. Oh, and what do you know? It has something to do with the devil. Or, well, not quite. That was the previous page. I'll do this one. Garrett W. Vance told this joke on April 22, 1998. Meanwhile, I was at tech school hearing the urban legend about the guy who killed himself in the room next to mine.
Very good.
He later became a science fiction author and illustrator. He also told by Patrick Myers scanned 331, whatever that means.
Scandinavian 331. That was the folklore narrative class at the University of Washington.
Oh. Okay, this Burke dude has got this book like ever present in his brain.
Yes.
I'm impressed. December 6, 1999. Of course, 1999 was the year that the moon blasted its way out of orbit of the Earth. As you recall.
No, I don't.
Apparently, you're not a Martin Landau fan.
Well, I did watch that show once, but we're off the topic.
Okay. When I died, I went to heaven and was given a tour of the Elysian grounds by St. Peter himself. We came to a walled-in area, and the saint begged me to be quiet until we had passed well beyond its vicinity. I asked, "Why is that?" He said,
Now, I believe this has been used for various religious groups, but it may be hush because the Mormons think they're in there all by themselves.
yeah, that's
Words
it.
to that effect, yes.
Well, your guys' version is, he said, because my friend, behind those gates exist the souls of blank, and they think they're the only ones here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's been used for different religious denominations. But was it left blank or was it filled in?
It says, insert sect of choice.
Ah, there we go.
That's what Garrett said, and Garrett is the guy who wrote.
I'll throw one in. He said, because my friend, behind those gates, it's just the souls of the sons of the. Oh shoot, I missed it. Okay, we'll do another one. Exist the souls of the Scientologists, and they think they're the only ones there. No.
Fair enough.
Okay, here's a better one. Because behind those gates, the Scientologists are clearing their, whatever you call them, thingies. What do they call the things in their brains?
Thetans, but Thetans.
They're clearing their thetans, and there's another thing you got to clear, like it's your, what's it called? There was some word for like whatever your little thing in your brain that's clogged that you got to clear.
Chakras?
No. That's yogis.
Pineal gland? Pineal gland?
No, there was a name for it, darn it. Oh, well. Anyway, I blew that. All right, let's do see if I can find another short one.
I get a point for that, though, at least, right?
You do. You get a point. Okay, there's a point. I hope somebody is keeping score because I forgot what the score was. Okay, page 111. Now, 111 is yet another interesting number because it's composed of the number 1, which of course is extremely singular. Plus, it's 3 ones. And 3, of course, is another magic number. So 111.
Mm-hmm.
On page 111, Bob Moore of Bob's class, April 23rd, 1998. Melody Patterson, Scandinavian Studies 230, January 18, 2000. So in other words, this means that both these people have told this story. He says, what do you call a cow lying down in a pasture?
Ding. Ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, that strikes me as a bit of a Fozzie Bear joke.
Isn't that good? Would you like me to tell you my wife's favorite joke from this book?
I would love to hear your wife's favorite joke. Your wife being?
Sarah Mossman, also known as Sarah Duncan, author of this book, Sophie Goes Ape, and the book Atlanta Locket to the Rescue. All right, her favorite joke from the book is that three guys walk into a bar, and they sit down together. The barmaid comes over to take their order. And the first guy says, "Drinks are on me. We did it in 120 days." They make their order, and the second guy says, "No, I'm going to pay because we got this done in 120 days." The waitress comes back with the beers, hands them out, and the third guy says, "My treat, guys, because we did it in 120 days." And the waitress says, "What did you guys do in 120 days? And the first guy says, "We did a puzzle." And the side of the box said 3 to 5 years.
That's a good joke. Oh boy.
Misunderstandings are ripe for humor, indeed.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So this is one of those puzzles that's made out of wood that's got about 5 pieces in it. And you just go plunk, 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 plunk. Ooh, that's fun.
Not only that, but there's a little knob in it. So you can
Right, with a knob. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yep, I remember those puzzles.
I used to sell them.
Those were good times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kindergarten was a good year. I still remember the girl I was in love with. Her name was Kathy, blonde, blue eyes, smooth. Not much of a figure, but back then, back then we weren't into those kind of things. When you were in love with a girl in kindergarten, it was all about her soul, her personality and her innate beauty. You didn't even know about other stuff that you were trying to get her to do.
Like a certain violinist I used to live by.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there, Ted. See, I'm even calling you Ted.
Yes.
Why'd I call you Ted? Because I'm obviously still subconsciously angry at Ted for lashing me whenever we played ping pong.
Well, you know what? He was a tennis champ. And he was good at table tennis as well.
So, anyway.
Did I tell you my favorite joke from the book?
Okay.
All right. It's from Groups Who Laugh at Themselves. Now, Sven Jr. came running home from school as fast as he could, and he said to his father, "Papa, I have the biggest beat in the 3rd grade. Is it because I'm Norwegian?" And his father said, "No, it's because you're 19.
Okay. There was a Texas joke similar to that, and I wish I could pull it out.
Well,
It had something to do with 2nd grade. Okay, so you're the one who told it to me.
What are the 3 happiest years in a Texan's life?
The second grade.
Yes.
Am I?
Oh, we forgot. You're in You're living in Texas, right, Jason?
I probably haven't been here offended though, but I'm sure there's some. Yes, I am. I've been here since 2014. Yes.
All right. Well, then I knew I had this hat nearby for a reason. Here, this will make you feel more at ease.
Oh yes, yes.
Oops! Wait a minute. There we go.
I did have some relative who was actually a Texas Ranger, but when I went to the little museum area, they weren't open. And then when I sent an email, I was ignored. So I don't know if I'll ever find out any more about that relative.
Oh, I didn't know Texas's TAD email.
Hey now, don't you know that like Elon Musk's got stuff out here now, and Apple, and at least in Austin they do, not in College Station, Texas, but yes. There's important research going on though. Various things going on.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason Elon Musk moved to Texas because he wanted to thumb his nose at California. So what other state would be the more opposite of California than Texas? Oh.
Maybe Washington, actually, in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
You could see
Yeah.
that.
Washington. I mean, we're practically a subsidiary of Texas.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah, like Washington, Oregon, and Texas are planning to, break off from the U.S. and form
Proceed.
Cascadia.
Oh, yes, indeed. Right. But there is definitely kind of a California and Texan tension. I've noted at times. There's people make a lot of comments and message boards and some back and forth about that.
Well, of course, the thing is, California is the state with the most delegates that's completely Democratic, and Texas is the state with the most delegates completely Republican. So there's always that, right?
Right. There's that, and there's cultural issues and people moving to Austin from California and so forth, and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Right. Yeah. But
All these
Texas
things.
does have SpaceX, and as you mentioned, now it's going to be the hub of Tesla. So you guys are on the up and up, I'll have to admit. Also, I don't know if you know this, Texas is the first state that has agreed to allow Tesla to become a public utility as far as electricity is concerned.
Oh, no, I did not know that part.
Yeah, they got a permit. So what they can do now is they can aggregate all the people's solar roofs all together into one computer controlled public utility, and they can buy and sell the electricity as the market permits, all based on the computer algorithms.
It sounds a little unstable, but I don't know. Not an expert.
Well, it's another one of Tesla's ways that they're going to take over the whole world. They kind of sneak in the back door and becoming a public utility with all their solar roofs. And then once you got your fancy algorithm, they can buy and trade. Because I don't know if you know how public utilities work, but they sell electricity through the day, and the rates go up and down depending on the demand. And so the trick is to store your electricity when it's worth less, and then sell it back when it's worth more.
Say, you know what? This reminds me of a story about a man you delivered pizza to.
Ah,
Yes.
Bill, you mean?
Yes, Bill Gates went to heaven and he got a tour. St. Peter showed him around, a lot of people singing in choirs and playing harps. And Bill said, well, this isn't very interesting. I need something more stimulating. So he goes down to hell, and the devil shows him around to a beach party with everyone drinking beer and playing volleyball. And Bill says, well, this is more to my liking. So Bill goes into hell. And then all of a sudden, the beach turns to fire. Demons poke him with pitchforks. And he said, what happened to the beach party? And the devil says, oh, that was hell 2.0. We upgraded to hell 3.0.
Yeah. I've heard different versions of this joke. So I wish I could remember what the other ones were, but there's all kinds of different things. So, okay, so that brings up a new subject. Oh, by the way, Burke, we have completely failed in our goal. You remember what our goal for today was?
Keep it under 1 hour.
Yeah, I think we already passed that barrier, and we're not even close to anywhere near the end at this point, unless we just kind of go, oh, we're done. But here's a question for you. So now you've gathered up all these jokes. Have you considered now taking a classic joke and then showing the main joke and then showing all the different branches that it could possibly go in?
We've done a few of those. We did that a couple times in here, yes.
Okay. I don't suppose you have any examples off the top of your head.
Well, back to urban legends, yeah, there's one that comes from an international incident joke, and it was told as a true story taking place in Moscow, in the embassy there. And then the version I heard was not told as a true story, even though it's an urban legend, it was told as a joke. And in this case, there's a man who checks into the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. And he thinks, I wonder if some of those old Nixon-era microphones are still hidden around here. So he looks around the room, and right under the dining room table, he sees something metal glinting at him. So he gets down on his hands and knees, yes, and he sneaks over, and he reaches this metal object, and he tries to pull it, and then he unscrews it. And he lifts it up and looks at it, and it's nothing but a wing nut. So he puts it on the table, and he goes back to unpacking his suitcase. Well, a few minutes later, the telephone rings. He answers it, and the man on the other end says, "Hello, this is the management. Do you know that you have the room right over our ballroom?" And the customer says, "No." And the manager says, "Yes. Well, maybe you can tell us why our chandelier just fell."
Oh!
Dangerous consequences.
Yes.
Anxieties, hopes, and fears are often part of a religion humor.
There's a horror device, a chandelier, waiting to fall and crush the people beneath it.
Yes.
In fact, now that I see that giant hand behind you,
Yes.
it looks a bit like a huge tarantula.
A bit,
it also
yeah.
it does evoke a certain chandelier quality as well.
It does, and I also hate to say it, but I'm about to be snatched away. There are things happening in the background that one can't even quite see. But for instance, my toddlers are pulling some strings back there. I'm probably going to have to make an exit here. So
okay, well
I apologize, but yes.
Then let us wrap it up. How can we just suddenly just kabam, slam, bang, dung, wrap it all up?
Horror and humor have a lot in common, as you were just saying. So the obvious solution for everybody's lives who might be watching your show tonight is to buy these 2 books. I would say that. How's that?
Link in the description. And they're all available on Amazon, right? So if you like the darker side of life, then you've got this one, Master of Rods and Strings. Like if you like to go to bed at night and have nightmares, read this, right before going to bed.
It's like taking a trip to France too. So
or if you want to go to France,
yes,
like it's kind of like a Puppet Master meets Hercule Poirot.
And there's even a little bit of romance in there.
Oh yeah.
And plenty of
romance
betrayal. Right. Plenty of betrayal.
Romance and puppets, they go together. Or if you just want to just lighten up a little bit, then you've got this book. You heard a whole bunch of different examples from this one.
Yeah.
So you've got that. While we're at it, soon we're going to be doing this one with Sarah Mossman.
Yes, eventually.
You can see that right by Ted. For some reason, I'm calling you Ted today.
Again.
That's one of your brothers, right?
What was your name? It started with a B, some kind of tree.
Yes.
Birke. Yeah. Then also there's this. Might as well do the whole deal. Drops in. And then I also have this one, which is out of print.
Yeah.
But quite good. That one right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then is this, I think that's all the books I have at the moment.
Isn't the Troll going to have a resurgence one of these days, Birke? Isn't that a plan too?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yes.
Is that another one that's out of print?
Yes, for the time being.
Okay.
So more to come. Yes.
More to come. All right. So thank you for Jason Marc Harris. And then
live
long and prosper. Now, there we go. And Birke Duncan. Now, hold on. Yours was backwards, so that would be a curse. Oh, there we go.
Uh-oh.
Because I don't know if you know this. Apparently, this is actually in a certain sect of Judaism. This is how they do their blessing, and that's how Leonard Nimoy got the idea.
Ah, okay.
He saw a rabbi doing this over a prayer, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to use that."
Smart.
Live long and prosper. All right. Till next time.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life. For the benefit of all beings everywhere. We gotta change.